What's up, everybody? We're back.
Yeah. Hey, welcome back to the Metalhead's Journey. Hey, so we're back around to the Metal Time Machine. If you haven't been following along with us, let me give you a quick rundown of what this is. We have a Wheel of Doom that has the last 40 years of metal on it. So starting back in 1984. And, hopefully you followed along with the show a little bit. You know we have the affinity for the number 4. That's how many times we like to shuffle our brackets. That's how many people are on the show here, kind of a thing. And so what we decided to do, and going back these years, was not go back to see what's the best record from this particular year. We're looking at the 4th best record from this particular year.
Underappreciated.
Yeah. So this week we are in 1994. And the 4th best metal album of that year was from a band called Tiamat, and the album is called Wildhoney. So we'll do a quick history of the band and the album here and get right into it. Tiamat, formed in 1987, is a Swedish metal band from Stockholm. The band went through a number of stylistic changes in their earlier releases before settling on gothic metal. They started out as a black and death metal band named Treblinka. The band has released 10 studio albums, including their most recent album, The Scarred People, released in 2012. They have sold over 500,000 records. Wildhoney, released in 1994, is the band's 4th studio album. This album marked a strong change in the style of their music, with more prog rock and psychedelic-influenced music and a less death metal-oriented style. The music on the album deals with the occult, nature, and LSD. The album features Johan Edlund on vocals and rhythm guitar, John Hagel on bass, Magnus Sahlgren on lead guitars, Lars Skold on drums, and Waldemar Sarikta on keyboards, and he was the producer of the album. I apologize. I'm sure I mispronounced that one incorrectly.
Better you than me, Josh.
This album, in fact, featured no singles.
Wow.
Yep. Dave, kick us off, man. What do you think about this album? Was this worth going back in time for?
I will say it is. I had not, full disclosure, I had not heard of Tiamat, the band, before this. So I was very excited to kind of get into a completely fresh experience. And one of the first things I had mentioned in our group chat that we sometimes will bounce ideas off and make fun of each other in is I mentioned that this immediately gave me Pink Floyd if they were a metal band vibes. And it's funny because that was actually what the main show, I was going to say showrunner, the primary songwriter of the band, Edlund, described as what he wanted the sound of this album to be like. I'll quote here. He says, "It's just a very young guy who wanted to sound like his favorite band, Pink Floyd, in regards to this album." So that's cool that I feel like I picked up on what he was putting down. And I do like Pink Floyd, and I do feel like immediately also I thought this record is not for everybody, as I'm sure we'll figure out here. But I enjoyed it. It was a nice change of pace from what we've been listening to. As we like to say on this channel, it was a vibe. And I feel like if you get the vibe, I think there's a lot to enjoy from this record. And it's an easy listen at just over 40 minutes when you include all the tracks.
Jonah, what'd you think?
I'm going to mostly agree with Dave. I thought, for me, lately, I've been vibing a lot with some of these Time Machine albums we've been doing, and this one is just pure vibes for me. I'm also going to agree with Dave that this album is definitely not going to be for everybody because it is much more vibey. It's kind of slower, prodding. It also, a lot of the tracks, and this is one of the things I liked about it, a lot of the tracks kind of meld together, so it kind of feels like a single piece of music rather than a bunch of individual tracks. And it made for that, given that it has a shorter runtime than some of the other albums, it made it kind of a breeze for me to get through. I was listening to this at work a lot, and it wasn't super loud in my headphones or anything, but I could still hear it nice and clearly. And it was getting me through the workday. Like I was really, really digging it. I think I may have listened to this album more than probably the last, 5 or 6 more. I listened to this album more than maybe the last 5 or 6, just because it made for really good background music, but also just the way I vibed with it so well. I mean, on vibes alone, this thing is a great album, but we can get into some of the nitpicky stuff a little later. But overall, I really enjoyed it.
Go ahead, Jason.
I want to say that I had heard of this band. I don't think I had actually ever listened to them, listened to any of their music, or had any idea what this was. So when I hit play, like we have a group chat, and I was like, okay, let's try this out. And immediately, as soon as the second track starts, you're like, yeah, this is definitely not what I was expecting, and it's definitely a vibe. And I immediately is like, I feel like we're either going to love it or hate it.
Mhm.
And to Jonah's point, almost all the songs just kind of bleed right into each other. I found myself when I realized that I liked the album was when I kept being surprised when the first track started over. I was like, damn, we already went through all of this. Because you don't hear a lot of breaks, so you don't catch a lot of the ends of the songs. The songs, I would say, are fairly distinct from one another, except for like the slower pace, across the board. Definitely some Pink Floyd vibes, which I'm a Pink Floyd fan, so I didn't mind it at all. I ended up enjoying this way more than I thought I was going to, going into it, because I wasn't familiar with the band. But it is definitely a vibe, and if it's not your thing, you'll definitely be turned off.
Speaking of
Man,
That's a segue.
it's interesting. I feel like I'm on an island here, dude. This album Tia made me super Tia mad. I did not like.
Did you write that all week?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Even workshopping that.
I've been waiting for this moment. Man, I hated this record. I don't have any other way to put it. I don't know, like, it's just not for me. I'm not gonna crap on like any of the performances or anything like that. Like, I'm not saying there's anything that's on here that's egregious, that is done poorly. I think the album sounds good from a production standpoint. Like, just to jump ahead, like, I give this album a 7 on production in terms of our score coming later on. Like, there's nothing in here that I'm going to sit here and say something particular about a member or the music sucks. I just hate it. I don't like what's going on in this. I think like I don't like so today, right? I know a lot of our listeners are older, but today there is rap music, okay? And this particular style of rap music today is it's like a mumble style rap, right? Which isn't as popular amongst some of the old heads, right? Or some of the older people that are into maybe, like that 90s rap or even 80s or something along the lines. This is like a mumble kind of metal thing that's going on here. Like, this guy is just mumbling and just kind of talking randomly throughout most of these songs. Oh, and then there's a few moments that he's screaming, and it's like, it's kind of cool initially, and then it's like, I don't know, it just doesn't fit for me. I don't know. There's a couple things that are interesting, but there's not a lot of redeeming factors for me on this record. I'll go into my MVP here. I'm going to go with Johan Edlund, only because there are some musical moments on this record that I think are pretty cool. That, if you were going to section those off and use them as like I don't know, if you're trying to make some sort of an ambient sound playlist or something like that, I think there's some moments in here that are pretty cool. So I'll go with Johan for that aspect of it. But otherwise, I'm just this album, the art of this album is totally lost on me. I don't get it. It's not for me. Yeah, exciting times. Jason, who's your MVP?
Same, Johan Edlund. From what I understand, basically he is the driving force, especially behind this album. From what I understand, I guess he let go of the other guitarist and the drummer, so it was just him and the bassist, and then he just got some fill-ins. Yeah, and the producer.
Well, he fired everybody in the band like right before
basically
this.
Yeah,
yeah.
from what
with
little
the
I was
exception
able
of
to find.
one other person.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
bassist, the,
Yeah.
the most important. But basically, what I saw is that I guess
John
the
Hagel, by the way.
creative differences, uh, and he moved on from the rest of that band. So
So the
I
other
mean,
guys, the other guys like to write like good, interesting music, and he was like, "I'm not about that life."
pretty
Is
much,
that
yeah. They
fair
were like,
enough?
"We still want to do black metal or whatever it is." And they're like,
Man.
"Yeah, I'm not going to do that anymore." So
Fair
like I
enough.
said, it's easy. I would be so shocked if it's not a sweep.
Is it Johann Sweet?
Yeah, for me at
Yeah.
least. I mean, he's
Yeah.
literally. I mean, he is the band. And it's funny. I like a lot of bands that end up being like this, like Death. You know, Chuck Schuldiner is like the guy in that band. Megadeth is Dave Mustaine functionally.
Steve Harris,
9 Inch Nails, and
Yeah.
Trent Reznor.
Trent Reznor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, that's true. Steve Harris for Iron Maiden
Iron
is
Maiden.
like more or less Iron Maiden. You know, I'm sure Maiden fans would argue that, but
Yeah. Dave, album art and title. Give us your scores.
So I'm kind of indifferent on them. I don't think they're egregious. I like them. But I came in at 6s on both of those. There's nothing bad. I think they're good. I think the album art is somewhat interesting. And it's funny because it does kind of fit with the vibe of the record. It's weird. It's like reminds me of fall.
Yeah.
And like I could just imagine being this. So like this shows my nerdom, but like I can just imagine like being in a forest, like just like laying on a pile of leaves, smoking a pipe, and listening to this album. Like I feel like that's exactly what the vibe calls for with this record. But it's 6. Like it's not blowing me away. It's good for what it is.
It's weird. It's another album that has a terrible title track. Like, why is the title track for this 45 seconds or a minute of nature sounds?
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing?
I mean, this is obviously, you know, I mean, he's obviously trying to tell some type of a story or a message or something.
Sure. Yeah, but about occult, nature, and LSD. Yeah, just checking my notes there. I'm giving this a 3 all the way around for the album art and the title. It's whatever. It looks dated, and
I'll jump in and pull this back around. I actually didn't mind the cover art. I think it is interesting based on the vibe of the record. Basically it's a collage of different images. And to Dave's credit, it's very much nature and a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I gave it a 7.5 on the cover art. The title, I mean, to Josh's point, like it didn't have anything to do with the song, but I do feel like it goes with the vibe. If it's all nature induced or whatever, so I gave it a 6 on the title.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I mean,
Josh.
I'm almost exactly right there with you. I ended up giving the art an 8 for all the same reasons. I really like it, and it's super 90s. I feel like this album art is super 90s.
It is.
And then for the title, I gave it a 6 as well. It's very much whatever. Not bad, but could be better.
The interesting part about this is that I like this album art because if this was made today, people would just assume it's AI generated. But this was probably hand drawn or painted or whatever. Almost certainly, right? And like
or a collage of images or something.
Yeah, like this was handcrafted in some way, shape, or form.
Yes,
and I think it's funny how we all kind of feel good, or generally good about the title and art, because I feel like this goes hand in hand with the vibe of the record. Like you either are all in or you're just not in at all. And so I feel like that tracks. Like if you're indifferent about the record, I don't think this album art is not going to sell you on it. Although if I was Jason's age and I was seeing this in a record store, I would never assume that this was metal. Like by any stretch of the imagination, I would never assume. Like I would have no idea what I'm about to buy.
I mean, Josh was like, "Is it really metal anyway?"
And then you would listen to it, and you would also wonder where the metal is.
Dude, I mean, I like gothic doom metal is a thing. Like that's kind of what this is. It's gothic metal.
I think that's part of the issue. That's part of the issue. Me and David talked about this before with all of the subgenres of whatever is considered metal now. It's just like every time somebody tries something new, they don't want to be labeled, so they just make up a new name for their style.
No, it's everything. You know, you have to have descriptive terms to describe what somebody's doing. I don't think there's.
Plus, we as humans just like to classify things in general.
Yeah.
Like I said, I gave this a 7 on production. I thought it sounded pretty good for what it was. Jonah, what did you have on production?
I gave it a 7.5, just a little above you. Yeah, I could hear everything clearly. I think the way everything's mixed, it gets the vibe across pretty effectively.
I do think the production does fit with the vibe. I'm a little lower on it than you guys are. I'm at a 6.5. I would love like a remaster or remix, whatever you want to call it. Of this, Josh just wants a new record, but like I would love a remastered of this, just a little bit crisper, and that might affect the vibe. So like it might be counterproductive. But I'd be curious to hear this with some just a slight bump in clarity.
Yeah,
I think for me, I think the only thing that would really need to improve would be maybe the drums. I think if the drums were like re-recorded or remixed, I think that would improve the album overall. But I think everything else, for me at least, it works. I think it works as is.
I mean, that's why I was a 6.5. Like it's good for what it is. It's more just my curiosity. Like I don't think it hurts the record.
Yeah, see, I'm going to agree with the part that you said there, Dave, with the vibe of the record being affected. I gave it an 8. Because I feel like whatever this is supposed to be, it nails it. Is the production through the roof? No, but I think it's supposed to be a certain way to make you feel a certain thing. And I think it worked for me. So for the production side, I gave it a solid 8.
Jason, why don't you give us your top tracks?
All right, let's see, where am I at here? All right, I got I don't really have an honorable mention. I just have my 3 top tracks. I got number 3, Whatever That Hurts. I got number 2, Gaia. And number 1, and it's not even close, Do You Dream of Me?
Wow.
That song, and Josh is going to know this because he's right there with me on my favorite movie of all time. I feel like that song could have easily been put into Legend. And would have fit perfectly. There's a section in the beginning. Perfectly.
That movie's terrible.
Yeah, it is.
that beginning section of that song is eerily similar to a scene that's in that movie, and I spent all day trying to figure out where I'd heard. It's about a kind of like a feel or a rhythm for it, and that's where it came from. I knew why I liked that song so much.
Yeah, I'll go next because I have the exact same 3 songs in almost the same order. So I have Gaia as my number 3, Whatever That Hurts as my number 2, and I completely agree with you, Jason. Do You Dream of Me is like the smash hit success for me of this record. I love the acoustic guitar solo towards the middle ending section of the song. It's so good. And it really showcases like the guitar work of this album that I think is purposefully like undersold. But I think when you get moments like that, it really accentuates it. Yeah, love that. I love that song.
Go ahead, Jonah.
All right. So I did have an honorable mention, Pocket Sized Sun. I think that's a really cool song. My number 3 is actually going to be Do You Dream of Me? Excellent song. Acoustic guitar sounds great. And then my number 2 and 1 are kind of a 2-hit combo because they bleed right into each other. It's going to be Whatever That Hurts at number 2 and the R at number 1.
I like the R as
I
well.
think,
it's so good.
I think those songs work really well together. And the main riff on the R has been stuck in my head since I heard it. That song is it's really good for me.
I don't share any of the same songs. Number 3 for me, I have Visionaire.
Okay.
The song's fine. It has a really good electric solo in it, which is probably the shining moment of this album, musically in a lot of cases. So a good little solo on that song. The song's fine. This is where I'm going to surprise the people of this show that follow along. I'm going to go with a couple of instrumental songs here because I can't do it with the other songs. Number 2 for me is Kaleidoscope.
Wow.
Just cool little sounding song. I know it's short.
It's a minute,
but-
and 20
20 seconds.
Yeah, I know what it is. Number 1 for me though, and I actually think this is a cool song.
Man,
And
it's
I'm gonna put this on my main playlist. It's Wild Honey. I think it sounds pretty cool.
You're trolling.
No, it's Planets. Planets is actually pretty cool.
Okay.
It's 3 minutes. You know,
Space Odyssey.
got a cool little sci-fi vibe to it.
Dude, did you also think of the opening theme for Star Trek: The Next Generation when you heard Planets?
Yeah. So, cool little song. Listen, again, I think this shouldn't be a shock to you guys, but I mean, it's a shock from an instrumental standpoint, but just from the fact that I'm just not a big fan of those songs. Next part here, this is where we like to. So, just got to put this next category here in terms everybody can understand. We realize and recognize that metal albums are at their best when they have 8 tracks. If you look at the true classics out there, they all have 8 tracks on them. So what we like to do every show is cut these albums down to the best 8 tracks possible to make these a metal masterpiece. I'll go first. For me, I had 2 cuts, obviously, because there's 10 tracks on this album. So I'm going to cut Wild Honey. What a waste of time. And then I'm going to cut A Pocket-Sized Sun. I think this is not good. It's an atrocity.
It is very Pink Floyd.
Yeah,
it's actually not, because Pink Floyd's good and this is not. So
It's the most Pink Floyd
you
song
could
out there.
say that it's got this Pink Floyd vibe, I guess.
Yes.
But that's like, I don't know. That's like comparing our music to Metallica's music.
Yeah, I know. It makes
mean,
Metallica look really, really bad.
Yeah,
So
totally.
So, okay, I'm going to bring this back to reality. I think there are 2 easy cuts here. Surprisingly, Wild Honey's not one of them. I actually really enjoy that song. I like that it opens the record. It fits 100% with the vibe. And hot take, I don't hate that it's the title track. I think it brings you into the album, in the headspace. If you can't get past the title track, then good. This is the last free exit. You can get out of the freeway now.
Okay.
So I think it's 25th Floor and Kaleidoscope. I think you cut those 2, even though technically
25th Floor is pretty decent.
They bleed into other songs or whatever. If we were really doing this the proper way, I would just combine those into some of the other tracks. Like, honestly, but for the purposes of our little session here, I'm gonna cut 25th Floor and Kaleidoscope, and I think the album is perfectly fine from there.
Yeah, I'll jump in right quick because mine is exactly the same as Dave's. I keep in Wild Honey as the open. It's very short and it just kind of sets the stage for this experience. So I don't mind it. The other songs are just basically filler, just prepping you from one song to the next. I can do without them. And I will say, this isn't a diss on those tracks. When I talked to Dave today, I told him, I don't even notice the interludes when I'm listening to the album. I actually had to, when I went through and graded song by song, that's when I realized which songs were the interludes. Because I had no idea, because they just kind of, like I said, it all bleeds together. But if I was going to cut to get down to 8, I'm cutting the 2 interludes.
Yeah, I mean, mine are slightly different. I do think Wild Honey can easily just be absorbed by the title track. Or if you cut it completely, I don't think it really messes with the vibe too much. And then 25th Floor is the only of the interludes that doesn't it does bridge the gap, but there's not enough there for me that it feels required. Whereas I completely disagree with Kaleidoscope being cut. I think there's enough there that you kind of need to have it. Or if, like you said, to be fair, you could merge it with Do You Dream of Me, because it's essentially just the setup for Do You Dream of Me. So, but yeah, I would cut
I
Wildhoney at
agree,
25th.
but I like the open segment for You Dream of Me so much. I just rather just get to it. Just give me the cake already.
All right, Dave, master of the track list. What's your track listing score here?
My track listing blah 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 blah. My track listing score is actually pretty good. I do think the album flows pretty well. I mean, because as Jonah has mentioned earlier, it feels like one solid piece of work, and which is how I consume albums anyway. So I came in at an 8. I think the track order is very good. I hesitate to give it a 10, but I honestly don't know what I would really change about it. Maybe trim a few sections here and there. I do think the final song, I had it right.
Pocket Size Sun.
Pocket Size Sun does feel like it meanders a bit towards the end of the song.
It's 8 minutes. It's an eternity.
It's not an eternity. It's just a progressive rock kind of progressive song. But yeah, I mean, so I'm at an 8 overall. I think it's good.
I'm about to give the highest track listing score I've ever given, and I gave it a 9.
Wow.
The reason I gave it a 9 is pretty much what I said earlier. I never noticed the interludes, and I was surprised every time it restarted because I didn't realize how far into it I was. And that, to me, is the sign of a really good set. When you can go through it and never be like, when I skip to the next song, or I forgot this song is next, or whatever. If you could just listen to it and jam it start to finish, I mean, they did something right.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. It's a 9 for me too, for all those same reasons. It flows so well together from start to finish. And like I said before, when I was listening to it at work, like it played in the background. It was vibing me throughout my work day while I was sitting at my desk, and not once. Let me backtrack a bit. The first time I listened to the album, I was really impressed and a little bit shocked when it transitioned from whatever that hurts into the R, because from a distance it sounds like, oh, this must just be a really long song, but no, it's actually 2 separate songs that just flow seamlessly into each other. So, and there's a lot of stuff like that on this album, so that's why it gets a 9 from me.
I'm gonna bump my score up to a 9. You guys convinced me. I had penciled in an 8 before we went live, and so like I wanted to stick with that. But even when I was talking initially, I wasn't super confident in my 8 anyway, because I said, man, you could probably give this a 10. I'm just gonna bump to an 8. I agree with you guys. I mean,
bump to a 9.
I'm sorry, yeah, bump to a 9. You guys convinced me. This just flows so easily.
It flows so well, yeah.
And I did the same thing as Jason, like, because I didn't have Spotify up when I did my first playthrough because I was working, and so like I didn't even realize I was near the end of the album until I just happened to click on Spotify. I was like, oh wait, I'm because I actually looked when the solo for Do You Dream of Me came on. I was like, oh man, what's this song? And that's when I noticed, oh dang, I'm almost done with this record. Yeah, you guys convinced me.
I gave it a 5 because who cares? Okay, so for the last category here, this is where we like to give our score for the record, and just give you guys some context on how we score these. For a normal person, average score is a 7. Well, for us, it's a 5. So for anything that's 4.9 and below, that's various levels of we would not recommend that record. Anything 5 and above, that's various levels of we would recommend the record. Anything 9 to a 10 is like an all-time classic.
Josh, you're gonna go last. I think that's.
I could just get it out of the way.
No, because we don't know sometimes when people click off. All right.
Yeah.
I want to give people plenty of time to do that.
All right,
Jonah, you want to go first?
I'll go first.
I think Dave's going to be the highest score. Maybe Dave should go first.
No. Let's let Jonah. Jonah doesn't go first often enough. I feel like we steal his thunder sometimes.
It's whatever. No, but I'll go first. Yeah. So like I said, based on pure vibes alone, this record would get like high 8s, like an 8.7, maybe 8.8, just on vibes alone. But obviously, I'm trying to think about it more critically and be a little more objective. And while I do agree that this album is not for everybody, very clearly based on what we've talked about, I do think it jams. There's some good riffs. There's some good, like if you're just looking at it, as the sum of its parts, there's some good guitar work. Nothing really crazy. It does, as far as tempo and because of that vibe, it does kind of go kind of slowly. So if you're not into it, it's going to drag, obviously. But for me, it didn't. I ended up at a 7.6 when it was all said and done. I really enjoyed it. I think it's absolutely worth a listen. And if you vibe with it after the first couple of tracks, I think you're going to love the rest of the album like I did.
I'll go next. Jonah, I'm not higher than you. So,
okay.
I did praise this record pretty heavily because I do think it is very good. But something Jonah said that I don't know if I'm going to say the exact same thing, but it kind of pivoted more to myself. Like, I enjoy this record, but one of the kind of criteria, the thing that kind of like my question that I ultimately ask myself when I'm doing these reviews is this an album that I'm going to regularly put in my rotation to listen to just on my own all the way through? And that question determines whether it's an 8+ or not. And so ultimately, because this is a very vibe specific record, I have to be really, really in the mood for this kind of record. I just don't imagine myself like always wanting to put this on. That being said, I do think this is a very good album, and I can easily recommend this to most metalheads or just people that are into like a slightly heavier version of Pink Floyd. Like this kind of touches on a lot of different people's genres. I'm gonna go 7.4. I think it's very, very good, and it's a strong recommendation from me.
All right.
Go ahead, Jason.
All right, so I ended up just not scoring the interludes. I didn't give a score for Wildhoney, and I don't really want to give the score for Planets either. Planets to me is just a 45-second hook with some guitar work over the top of it.
It's 3 minutes long.
Yeah, I know. Dave told me it's a song, so I had to score it. So it did knock down the score a little bit. Overall, I am going to agree with both Jonah and Dave. I don't know if I would listen to this regularly because it is a vibe. Like I would have to be in the mood to listen to this. But I, at my advanced age, am more in this mood than I am into some of the crazier moods that I used to be when I was, a teenager or in my early 20s. So I end up giving this a 7.1.
Ooh, okay.
Man. Oh, you guys are so close.
Yeah.
I'm just going to drag this score down.
That's okay, man.
Yeah. I'm trying to give everybody enough time to go ahead and click off so they can enjoy this review.
Yeah.
You know what's going to be low? It's the question is just how low.
How low do you go?
So like 2.5 is kind of like the threshold for albums that you don't understand, but you don't you're not necessarily trying to crap on it. I get what's going on here. I'm not trying to crap on it. I get it. So I'm not going to give it a 2.5. But again, like not to beat this thing to death, right? I hated this record. I hated any time I went back to it. I showed the wife this record today. Just like let me show you this album that they're making me listen to. And I played a couple of songs, and she's like, "These would be instant skips." I'm like, "Totally, I agree."
Luckily, you married her.
Yeah. So this is a 3.2 for me. I did not enjoy any of my time with this record.
All right, so that puts this record. It was at a 7.4
before Josh's score,
which would have been good, worth listening to. But that's not what the score is because Josh's score counts. So this does bring it down to a 6.33.
Okay.
Which I will read what that is for us. 6, above average, recommended with caveats. An album rated 6 has more positives than negatives and generally delivers a good listening experience. Though it may have noticeable flaws, inconsistent tracks, or lack originality, it's worth checking out, but only with tempered expectations. Although 3 of us would disagree with that, ultimately that's where the review's at.
What is
I do think
well, go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. The opening statement of that score description I think is perfect. Recommend with caveats, because I think we can all agree that even though we liked it, the caveat is you have to kind of be in the mood and or like this type of vibe that the album is presenting. That's a pretty big important caveat, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the description of a 3?
Okay. So a 3 is subpar, poorly executed. A 3 indicates an album with more negatives than positives. There might be some attempt at creativity, but the execution fails or the music may be uninteresting. It's mostly disappointing, and while it may have 1 or 2 redeeming tracks, it's generally not recommended.
I think that sums up your thoughts perfectly, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yep.
What about 7? What's the description for 7?
While we're on it, we'll just go ahead and go through all of it. 7, good, worth listening to. A 7 is a solid, enjoyable, and well-made album. The album has strong tracks and likely showcases creativity or skill, though it may have some filler or uneven spots. It's definitely worth listening to for fans of the artist or genre, which I think fits exactly what the 3 of us feel about the record. So independently, Josh's score and our score fit. It's just, the record between the 4 of us is a 6.
Which that's why we all 4 have a voice.
Which I do think is important, right? Because this record, more so than others that we reviewed, is definitely not for everybody, and there's always going to be 1 out of 4 people in your friend group that is dumb, and so that's what we have here. I'm just kidding, Josh. I love you.
Hey, look, I was dumb last time.
That's fair. What was the last record we reviewed? Oh, I know.
Limp Bizkit.
Yeah.
Have we ever disagreed more?
I don't think anybody
far
would know
apart
that since
before?
it hasn't come out. Oh, I don't know. I don't
Like a 3. What did you say? 3 point what?
3.2.
3.2 to 7.6.
Oh, the disparity.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's a big delta.
That's a pretty big delta.
Yeah. For funsies, I remember on our top 50 albums, I did a disparity between me, Adrian, and Josh and Jason's score, because I remember sometimes it would just be ridiculous disparity. Oh, I can tell you on Queensryche, that was no, not the disparity wasn't as high because we were in the 9s.
I think Jason was in the 6s, right?
Yeah. This might be the biggest disparity. Might be the biggest disparity.
All right. Well, hey, if you think this video is worth a 7 and it just has some uneven moments like mine, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe. We're putting out weekly metal content right now. We got metal reactions, metal reviews, metal time machines, metal brackets, and all kinds of other cool stuff. And hey, in the meantime, live long and prosper.
Take it easy, everybody.
Later.
Peace.